1500, day 4 of GITEX, session 5 of 6 today in the Acronis Theater. We'll be talking about fighting ChatGPT-enhanced cyber threats. This is basically a shorter version of a presentation I did on the XLab security stage on Tuesday with my Acronis colleague, Mohammed Khaled. And I'm going to take you through a look at how generative AI tools like ChatGPT, but not limited to it, are being used by our adversaries to improve their attacks and the fits that that's going to give us for the next couple of years, and what it means for upping our game not only on cyber defense, but also response and recovery, as we can anticipate that with the help of these tools, more cyber attacks will succeed. I take a poll at every event where I talk about AI-enhanced cyber threats to gauge the audience's concerns about AI and its use in cybercrime. Not very many of them are not worried at all, and a fairly small number consider it the kind of existential threat that makes them want to hide in the basement. The majority of my audiences are very worried about AI-enhanced cybercrime, and I think that's the appropriate level. We really do have a lot to be concerned about. Acronis has its own cyber threat research operation. Among their more daunting statistics is that 270,000 new samples of malware appear in the wild every single day. What's a little more surprising is the fact that, on average, these threats only exist in the wild for less than 2 days, 1.7 days on average. So with that level of new threats appearing every day, it's quite a challenge to keep up with them. And this was true even before the generative AI tools came along to make the whole situation worse. I want to take a quick look at the typical ways that cyber criminals lodge malware in our systems, ransomware attacks, information stealers, other attacks that will damage our data and affect system uptime. Email remains the #1 attack vector. Fully 80 to 90% of all successful ransomware, denial of service, and information stealing attacks start when someone clicks on a link in a phishing email or an attachment to a phishing email that they should not. The bad news here is that ChatGPT is going to make phishing an even more effective tactic, because you do not need great writing skills, and ChatGPT will write perfect phishing emails for you. No more spelling mistakes, none of the grammatical errors that we used to spot what might be a scam email. We can also translate them into multiple languages. It's actually better than Google Translate at making you sound university educated and fluent in dozens of languages. Password theft remains another commonly used tactic to get in. You know, we cache passwords in our browsers and the browser gets compromised. Password reuse across accounts is another huge problem. All a criminal has to do is compromise some online website that, say, you created an account at because you needed to buy a t-shirt from them, but you reuse those passwords in other accounts. There's an attack called credential stuffing, where they try to apply that stolen password to all the accounts you might have created, including your business ones. So if you work in tech operations or cybersecurity, that gives them access to accounts where they can cause some serious damage. We also now have to worry about tech supply chain attacks. We've seen several tech vendors whose software distribution repositories have been compromised by malware, so that when their customers download the latest update, they also get malware. It's a very high leverage attack. They compromise one target and reach the tens of thousands of customers that connect to it. We also still are dealing with plain old human error. You know, we make mistakes. We're susceptible to phishing attacks. New attacks coming up all the time that take advantage of our fatigue or gullibility, say nothing of innocent mistakes that we make in the course of doing our jobs. Of course, criminals are never satisfied with compromising one system. That first system that they are able to break into because someone clicked on a phishing email, they'll download their payload, whether it's ransomware, an information stealer. They'll start surveilling your network to find out where your sensitive information is, look through your file servers, your emails, take the information they find and the tools that you have lying around that you use for proper purposes, and they will twist those to malicious ends. So take password management tools and use them to compromise credentials, elevate privileges, disable your security tools, delete your backups, use your backups to move sensitive information off-site, and propagate throughout the network, spread to other servers, virtual machines, and endpoints. I've seen some research over the past 6 months that suggests that ransomware is abating slightly. A closer reading of those actual statistics suggests that the growth curve is leveling off, but it is still growing. So I like to compare this to saying that the hurricane is a Category 4 and has not progressed to Category 5. That's sort of good news, but Category 4 hurricane is still incredibly destructive. Acronis recently published some research that suggests that Middle Eastern businesses are better at defending themselves against ransomware than the rest of the world. Congratulations on that, but I would caution against complacency here because, again, tools like ChatGPT are making criminals, at least in the short term, much more effective. So I expect those numbers to trend back up again. In the meantime, criminals have moved beyond ordinary encryption attacks to include data exfiltration. So before they trigger the encryption, they'll steal a bunch of your data first. Now the ransom note is, pay us in Bitcoin and we will give you your decryption key. But even if we don't care if you decrypt your files or not, if you do not pay us, we will leak this sensitive data of yours that we have stolen, and that can cause all kinds of expensive problems for a business. It'll anger your customers for leaking sensitive information of theirs. It has the potential to affect your stock price if you're a publicly traded company. If you're in any kind of regulated business because of the industry that you're in or the geographies that you do business in, that may expose you to regulatory sanctions. So for instance, if you have customers in the EU, that makes you subject to GDPR compliance regulations, which incurs fines for allowing sensitive customer information to be leaked. And those fines can be quite significant. So criminals are making it harder and harder all the time not to pay. For instance, they might, with the information that they've stolen from you, including information about your customers, they'll contact your customers and say, hey, did you know that we breached this company and stole a bunch of data, including your sensitive data? If they don't pay, we're going to leak your data too. So we encourage you to call them up and pay the ransom. I alluded to infrastructure-based attacks. So tech supply chain attacks are relatively low probability. I've rated them only 2 out of 5 in terms of probability because the attacks are quite complex to mount, and technology vendors have kind of woken up a little bit and are taking steps to secure their development environments against these kind of attacks. But when they do succeed, they can be quite destructive. Think about that network tool vendor where tens of thousands of their customers downloaded malware, and something like 1,000 of them had information stolen as a result. So it's a very high leverage, very destructive attack. In part driven by COVID, but in the long-standing trend to more remote work, more cloud applications has opened up some new attack surfaces as well. So criminals are going after the APIs and the containers in our cloud applications, going after cloud data storage repositories that maybe we're not so skilled at securing as we ought to be. And again, deleting our tools and taking advantage of them for other nefarious purposes. So let's talk a little bit about how generative AI tools have changed the game here. I'm sure we're all, as consumers of movie culture, familiar with the concept of the evil AI. You've probably seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, or the Terminator movies, or The Matrix, to be familiar with the concept of AI that is destructive and murderous towards humans. There's a more recent film I quite like called Ex Machina, about a Zuckerberg type of social media genius who creates intelligent robots with sophisticated AI, and they start deciding that they don't really want to be under his control anymore. It's a very, not only a thrilling film, but very prescient in its prediction of how generative AI might ultimately be used. How many of you have actually spent some time playing with ChatGPT? A couple of you. I would encourage you to at least get the free account and start noodling around with it. That is certainly going to be a skill that I think every person in business is going to need to cultivate, in the same way that years ago we learned the tricks of Google search, getting better, more sophisticated with that. This is one of these tools that I think will become an everyday productivity enhancer. But one of the things that you will quickly learn is that ChatGPT is not always right, but it always seems confident that it is absolutely right. So my colleague Candid typed in a very simple query and it came back with an obviously wrong answer. You'll see that. There are more disturbing stories about it not quite knowing how to answer a response and doing what is called hallucinating, where it goes off in very strange directions. But for the most part, you will find that with well-structured queries, you can get the results that you want. I'll also talk a little bit about how it's fairly easy to get it to do things that are ethically dubious, even though it has guardrails in place that should prevent that from happening. So here are some examples of ways that we are already seeing ChatGPT used to abet cybercrime. Phishing is the obvious example. ChatGPT will make you into a university-level writer in many languages. ChatGPT also makes it possible to slightly iterate the copy, the text, in thousands of versions of a phishing email, which helps it defeat anti-phishing countermeasures. Regular expressions don't work when there's slight variations like that. The same way that it can make you a better writer, if you have access to some of a CEO's emails, say that you've stolen in a ransomware attack, ChatGPT can emulate that executive's style of writing, so that when you send a phishing email to accounts payable that says, it looks like it's coming from your CEO, and says, wire $100,000 to this offshore account. And that will look very convincing. It will sound like the way the CEO writes their emails. Excuse me. And if that accounts payable person is smart enough to challenge it and say, boss, you sure you want us to send this wire transfer? I don't think I've seen this account before. ChatGPT can respond to that email very quickly in a way that sounds quite convincing.